ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
Hi, it's PK here from the podcast Politics Now. And as the politicians hit the streets this election campaign, we'll help you navigate the spin.
Well, it just shows a lack of preparedness, I think. Being campaign fit means making sure your top people, your leader and your shadow treasurer,
Are saying the same stuff.
are on the same page.
And bring you the deeper analysis on what matters to you.
That's the implication, right?
Of
You're
course.
so right. It's about are people just sitting at home on their butts, basically, not doing very much and getting paid a great deal?
And bring you the deeper analysis on what matters to you. It's called Politics Now, and you can find it on the ABC Listen app.
It's a story you'd expect out of America, but last week, two men, allegedly each carrying a gun, managed to get into the MCG for a packed AFL match. So how could that have happened here, in a nation where gun control is so tight and where security screening should be amongst the best in the world? Today, investigative reporter Josh Robertson on what unfolded and whether a new AI security system at the country's largest stadium is really fit for purpose. I'm Sam Hawley on Gadigal land in Sydney. This is ABC News Daily. Josh, we're going to talk about how AI technology became a big part of security screening at perhaps Australia's most prominent stadium, the MCG. Let's start with what unfolded last week, of course, at the match between Carlton and Collingwood. It was a big night of footy, wasn't it?
Yeah, a signal clash with the Australian secular religion at Australia's secular shrine, the MCG.
Yes.
We had tens of thousands of footy fans streaming in last Thursday for that clash between Carlton and Collingwood. So that was 82,000 fans.
Yeah, huge number.
Yeah, I mean, the G, it boasts sort of world-scale type crowds. I mean, they're really big numbers.
Yeah.
But among all those fans, there were two men, and police say security guards, noticed these guys acting up. And they called police at about 8:30 p.m. because these guys were refusing to leave the MCG. And they were, on those accounts, behaving badly. So that's when police say the men were searched by officers, and they were allegedly found with two guns that they'd smuggled into the venue, and one of them was loaded.
Oh my gosh.
Fortunately, nobody was hurt, and police have ruled out terrorism or any kind of organised plans for violence. But the security breach did shock the wider community.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, everyone was talking about this. It's such an unusual thing, Josh, to happen, right?
That's right. And we've all been through the queues and the checks and whatever. Everyone's been through it. There's one thing that you hope, well, a few things, but
Yes.
these things in particular, they hope they can prevent from coming into places like this.
Totally.
And that is firearms, loaded firearms. The remarkable thing about this story, among other things, is that they allegedly got these guns past security guards and past the MCG's new artificial intelligence-driven security system, which is the first of its kind in this country.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that security system a bit more in a minute, but it is a matter, of course, before the courts now, isn't it?
That's right. And so, on the material that authorities have presented to the court, we don't know the motive, but we know both men have been charged with firearm offences, including one of them having a loaded firearm.
Yeah.
And both of the men were on bail at the time.
All right, so tell me then, how has the Melbourne Cricket Club, which runs, of course, the MCG, responded to all of this?
It's fair to say it was a little PR issue for them.
Yes, it's not great.
So the chief executive of the Melbourne Cricket Club, Stuart Fox, he said the incident was extremely disappointing and upsetting. And he says the breach at the MCG was ultimately due to human error. So in his statement, he said security screen units, and we're talking about this AI-driven device, identified items of concern. So it did pick up these guns and further investigation was required. And this is where it gets interesting. He said, our initial internal investigation identified a breakdown in the thoroughness of the secondary and manual screening process.
The physical check.
That's right. So after this, they boosted the manual screening process, and they say that people were going to be experiencing slight delays as they attend upcoming events.
Thank you for your patience as you make your way into the ground.
Long lines and lengthy delays for some fans. Security tightened for the first game at the stadium since Thursday night's scare.
Shocked, really shocked. Something terrible really could have happened. My scarf will go off because of the badges and I get patted down and my bag, my huge bag gets checked. So how they got in with firearms is beyond me.
Maybe this is a wake-up call for the security companies to make sure that they're doing their job properly.
All right, so Josh, let's delve more deeply into this AI screening technology. It's known as an entry point screening system, which sounds sort of fancy. Is it new?
Well, yes and no, in a way.
Yeah.
So ahead of the 2024 season, the MCG underwent major security upgrades with the installation of these AI-powered scanners. And the first use of it was during a big cultural event, which was the Taylor Swift concerts at the G in early 2024. Previously, those fans in that kind of scenario would have to wait in line for someone with a metal detector to check each one. But this new technology streamlines the process, so fans just walk on through these entry gates. And so you got more people moving quicker through this checkpoint at any one time.
And the AI screening technology, it's known as Evolv Express. So how does it actually work?
So Evolv Express involves fans walking between the scanners without stopping. It's got touchless sensors that, they say specifically detect concealed weapons. So it combines these sensors with AI to differentiate between weapons and innocuous items. These sensors analyse the shape, size and density of objects. And that's how they're supposed to tell the difference between a gun, an improvised explosive device, and a smartphone or a set of keys. So the website shows a tablet screen that puts red boxes over people that should be checked. And it shows the security guards where they should check on those people who they should stop. Importantly, the website says it helps to eliminate potential bias in decision-making. So profiling about certain genders, ethnicities, age, so forth, or, the way people look. It's been used across stadiums and, arenas in the US for major sporting events like the Super Bowl and the NBA.
But what you found, Josh, is that there are a number of criticisms of this technology.
Yeah, so it most decisively came under fire in the US over failures to pick up weapons in schools. So this is something we're not really familiar with here in Australia.
Thankfully.
Indeed. But at a high school in New York called Thomas R. Proctor High in October 2022, a student smuggled in a hunting knife. This is like Crocodile Dundee style knife. Tragically, he used it to launch this unprovoked, premeditated attack on a poor student, suffered lasting traumatic injuries. So that was a flashpoint of concern about this. It just didn't pick up this hunting knife. So there's a US-based research outfit. It sets itself up as a really independent assessor of security technology. It's called IPVM, and it has been investigating Evolv since 2021, which was the year before this terrible attack in the New York school. So it found Evolv overstated the ability of its machines to differentiate weapons from those ordinary harmless items. And part of the concern was the false positive rate, depending on the settings and the location. This false alert rate, which is basically like flagging harmless items as potentially concerning items, this false alert rate went from 5 to 60%. And the highest false alert rate it found was in places where people were more likely to carry metal items. So like schools was at the top of that list because all the kids have laptops and all that. There's a situation there where, security teams, they get the flag on the tablet that something's worth investigating, and it turns out to be nothing of concern. Every system has false positives, but the issue is that a higher number can lead to security guards. It's human nature. Beep, 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 keep investigating, find nothing. this can lead to complacency, what you call operator fatigue, and you just stop checking every alert that comes through.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are a number of court cases, aren't there, in the United States involving Evolv at this point?
Yeah, that's right. One of the most significant was where they got sued by an authority, a government federal authority, the Federal Trade Commission. So they sued specifically over the technology's use in schools. And this lawsuit alleged the company made false claims in marketing and selling, that it was deceptive, unlawfully deceptive. This case, it settled late last year, not long ago. And Evolv wasn't required to admit or deny any of the allegations. But as part of the settlement, the court did prohibit the company from making claims about this technology's ability to detect weapons, to ignore harmless personal items, and the accuracy of this weapons detection compared to metal detectors. Crucially, that New York school district had spent, $3 million on this equipment before the young man was stabbed with that hunting knife. The ruling allowed these schools to dip out of their contracts, to cut their contracts.
Okay, so there are defenders of this process as well, aren't they, of Evolv? You've spoken to a former ASIO agent, Neil Fergus. He's worked at really big events overseas, including the Olympics.
Yeah, I think he's done 11 Olympics.
Oh, wow.
A bunch of World Cups and Commonwealth Games. He thinks it's pretty smart tech and it's the way of the future, basically.
Yeah.
He's thinking of events like the Commonwealth Games on the Gold Coast where you had families in tears because they missed the opening ceremony, waiting an hour and a half in lines, and ministers promising to fix it. And he said what allegedly happened at the MCG is not the way that this AI security screening is supposed to work. So he makes the point that if it's calibrated properly, there'll be very few false positives. Basically, the outcome that you get, the scanning outcomes that you get from this AI system, they're basically the same as older metal detectors. But the key thing, it's less intrusive, lets the crowds flow.
All right. So, Josh, there are, of course, reviews underway about what happened at the MCG last week. And, of course, the allegations are really concerning. The thing is, when we go to these big venues, we do want to get in quickly, right? But we also, I'm pretty sure, want to know that we're going to be safe once we're in there.
We do. And I mean, it's the rare catastrophes that happen that make, people realise. I mean, if any one of us had lost a loved one in a stadium terrorist attack, this would be absolutely front of mind rather than just, getting to our seats.
Yeah.
So, in Australia, ASIO, the National Security Strategy recognised that sports stadiums on big event days, they're among the favoured targets of terrorists because they're crowded places. It sends a message when you want to do that kind of organised violence. So what are the legal obligations for these venues around protecting patrons? Right now, in Australia, there's these best practice guidelines and warnings. But in the UK, very recently, Sam, there was a law passed. It actually introduced a binding legal obligation for venues to make sure that they detect every potential threat before someone enters a venue, that they do everything reasonably possible to guarantee the safety of their patrons. We don't have that in Australia yet.
Sounds like it might be a good idea. So tell me, Josh, you've had a really good look at this now. Do you think it's just a teething problem with this AI technology that will eventually be smoothed out and basically getting into stadiums is going to be a whole lot easier, a whole lot smoother? Or is it just actually safer to go back to the old way, which is physical checks and looking in people's bags?
Yeah, you got two competing interests there.
Yes.
From what I've seen so far, I think it's inevitable that this stuff is going to be adopted because I think that most of the time, these kinds of concerning security incidents aren't going to arise. You're dealing with some small probabilities there, but you cannot ignore them. When people hail AI security screening as the future and, a win-win for venues and patrons, I think that history is going to be on their side. It's quite clear that it's the other stuff around this that's absolutely necessary to make it work. So you've got to have that secondary screening. You've got to have people who actually know how to use these machines optimally to make sure that they're set up so that you don't get too many false alerts, but you don't miss anything either. And these security teams need to be constantly on guard and not complacent and not just trusting that AI is going to deal with it, because at the end of the day, human intervention is what's going to avert catastrophes.
Josh Robertson is an investigative reporter with the ABC's National Digital Reporting Team. This episode was produced by Sydney Peed, audio production by Adair Shepherd. Our supervising producer is David Cody. I'm Sam Hawley. Thanks for listening.